another shocking weekend in the Big 12, and it's time to stop wondering if BYU can do the job anymore. And I know we've talked a lot of BYU football on this show. I know we've talked about whether or not they're a college football playoff contender. All of that is 6-8 weeks away. What we are asking now, and if you're a BYU fan, what I think you have to wonder, can you win the Big 12 championship? You are looking at a situation where some people believe in BYU in the Big 12 and some don't. The coaches poll actually did not elevate BYU beyond where they were last week at 12. You're number 9 in the AP poll now, which obviously is far more important. But I think perception is reality in college sports. And I wonder how much respect BYU has across the board after what was a dominant performance in Orlando. Did RJ Harvey run all over BYU? He did. Did it matter? It did not. It did not at all, because Jake Retzloff, Darius Lassiter, and this BYU defense was absolutely dominant. And I think they answered a lot of questions about their ability to go on the road in a hostile environment, which also speaks volumes about the BYU fan base, which showed up in mass in Orlando and took over the bounce house, something that you don't see often. The bounce house in Orlando, as I've talked about on this show for a very long time, is one of the best home field advantages in college football, unless BYU is coming to town and Gus Malzahn is still the head coach. And that BYU defense came and dominated. Jake, I don't think there's any more questions. This is a Big 12 conference championship contending BYU team.
Absolutely. And I think the adjustments they made offensively against UCF, really stood out. I mean, we talked all week last week about how, BYU needed to run the football more to win this game. You've got LJ Martin with 100 yards on the ground. BYU needed to take care of the football. And, you look at it and no interceptions out of Jake Retzloff. You look at the defense, and obviously it's 2 weeks in a row where the opposition has ran the ball against you, effectively. But obviously, like he just said, with your performance overall in the game, RJ Harvey's performance didn't really have this massive impact like it typically does for UCF. And I think, a lot of that was, the defensive game plan, the defensive scheming, how you went about slowing down Ja'Carri Brown. Like there was a lot of positives out of this football game for BYU. And yeah, I absolutely think we need to be looking at them now as a team that can go out and compete for a Big 12 championship. I think that, BYU has shown you that they are mature enough now as a football team and as a coaching staff where they can see, okay, hey, we're going on the road against this UCF team. It's not going to be good enough just to have Jake throwing it all over the football field. We are going to actually have to run the football, and, we are going to have to take better care of the football. I felt like, we didn't get that bad, cute trick play stuff out of Aaron Roderick. We got a commitment to running the football. And I just felt like BYU was prepared. That's the word that keeps coming back for me week in and week out. They look prepared, and it's just really a matter of, does the preparedness translate into execution for BYU? And this week it clearly did.
Yeah, I 100% disagree. I think that the balance and the play calling on offense for BYU still needs significant work. I thought the change that this offense made to allow Jake Retzloff to run more, as much as a double-edged sword as that is, I thought that was the big change. I think when you look at some of the numbers in this game, that LJ Martin only had 15 carries to me is a mistake. LJ Martin's the best back on that team. He has got a different kind of explosiveness. I think he makes good decisions. I think, of course, he's got to show that he can protect the football, but to only give him 15 carries, to spread it between him and Hinckley Rapati, I think is a mistake. I think the only reason you got a significantly higher volume of running plays versus passing plays is because Jake Retzloff ran the ball 14 times and ran it effectively. I thought that play where he ran for that first score, the minute you saw that play break down and he took off, you knew it was going to be a good day for Jake running the football. I would love to see them just turn around and run the ball 4, 5, 6 times in a row. But that's not who Aaron Roderick is. And I think we have to get used to that. I think it is also very interesting that you're looking at Jake Retzloff only throwing the ball 24 times. And again, I thought this was one of his more efficient games throwing the football. I thought he did a much better job protecting the football when he threw it. But let's not make any mistake. The play calling was not better in this game for BYU. And I think I saw a lot of that on Twitter that, hey, I feel better, or the play calling was not more balanced. The play calling was not better. Jake Retzloff ran the ball 14 times. And his ability to, in my opinion, go off script running the football is why they were able to dominate this game. Those critical first down runs he got, his ability to slip out, and in my opinion, get even half a yard, right, and avoid the sacks, I thought was huge. But again, he ran the ball 14 times and averaged 2.7 yards a carry. That tells you he was pressured a lot. So there are definitely some things to clean up. And I think that's very evident if you watch this game. But I also think what's so evident is Isaiah Glasgow is the best linebacker in this conference. I think the way that Glasgow played, the way that this BYU defense came up time and time again, and for the third week in a row, put a physical beating on a quarterback, that's the storyline out of this game. As much frustration, I think we're going to deal with this Aaron Roderick play calling frustration all season long. I think that's just who he is. I think it's his identity, but I can handle that as long as the special teams executes. The trick play on the field goal, the fake field goal, brilliance. Should he have thrown it? Absolutely not. If you're the kicker in that situation, and you're not comfortable throwing that pass, I don't care if the guy's wide open. You got to get the first down. You're faking a field goal. That was your priority. That's what you did. This defense physically beating people, physically taking the want to out of players. I think that's the storyline in this game.
Yeah, I agree. They were extremely physical and obviously knocking Brown out of the game. And you saw that the broadcast had all kinds of clips of him on the ground, kneeling over, on the bench, kneeling over. Like, it was clear that he was uncomfortable, and they put it to him. But I guess I don't know. I think that BYU, I guess I came out of this game feeling like BYU ran the ball so effectively that they just simply didn't need to run it more. Like, it had been nice to run it more. You could have run it more. Like, you could have controlled this game more. You didn't need to throw it as much as you did, but they were running it so effectively that I felt like that was just kind of the flow of the game for them. So I agree that generally speaking, Aaron Roderick tends to be, a pretty inconsistent with his play calling. I mean, I think we've talked about that. That's been pretty well established. But I don't know. I like the balance. I thought that LJ Martin and Rapati were a nice 1-2. They seem fresh all game. They seem to be one step faster than the guy chasing them. Like, to me, I just felt like it was a overall, yes, there are things to clean up, but I felt like you went on the road, you had a plan, and you executed the plan, which led to you winning this game pretty comfortably. We didn't get the, hey, Baylor climb back into this game situation.
Yeah, see, I disagree with that. Again, I don't know what game you watched, but you gave up 14 points in the fourth quarter. And this is the one thing coming out of this game that really worries me. This is a pattern with BYU where you have a comfortable lead. I think we certainly saw this against Oak State, and you allow them to come back in the game. And I think that this team, the one thing that I would really like to see this team do besides run the football more is close games out by running the football more, burn the clock. If you take teams out of their ability to possess the football in the third and fourth quarter, I think that really that would make a difference at the end of this game. And when you're giving up 14 points in the fourth quarter, that's concerning to me. It doesn't matter to me anyway. It does not matter who you're playing. If you're giving teams 14 points in the fourth quarter, you're giving them life. You are giving them life. And this game, I agree, was not close. It should have been a much wider margin of victory. If you don't give up those 14 points, you win this game 37-10. That's a dominant victory. And I understand people are going to be like, well, you're so negative. It's not negativity. If you're BYU, again, I encourage you, go look at the coaches poll. And you're going to be like, oh, it doesn't matter. It does matter. Perception is reality. And I think on a busy Saturday of college football, How many people of note were watching the play-by-play of BYU and UCF? Not a lot. Not a lot at all. And so when you ask, hey, is 37-24 different than 37-10 when your garden variety college football playoff voter is looking back in December and trying to figure out if you belong in or belong out? Because let's be honest, if BYU doesn't win the Big 12 championship, are they likely to get into the college football playoff? Not likely to get in my opinion. If they don't win, you left things to question. 37-24 is a hell of a lot different perception versus reality than 37-10.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
I think it is their inability to control the clock because they don't. And this is why I want LJ Martin to be the number one back. Give him the ball repeatedly because he can catch the ball and he can run the ball and you can control the clock.
But do you have no fear that the guy's going to get hurt if you overexpose him?
He's
been hurt his entire career.
That's football. I think you can't, man. It is Halloween. We can't worry about people getting injured anymore. He's your best running back. And I understand. I'm not saying not to give Rapati carries. I'm not saying that at all. They're thunder and lightning. And that's how in my opinion, that's how they should be used. They should be used where for every 3-4 carries, Rapati gets 1. LJ Martin gets 3-4, Rapati gets 1. And if LJ Martin gets hurt, well, now it's time to get into your depth. That's good football teams. And if you're a good football team, you have depth. You look at the bottom of this conference offensively. You look at the Utahs, you look at the Houstons, you look at the Oak States, you look at the Baylors. They don't have depth. If you're going to win in this league and in college football across the board, you've got to have depth. We're going to talk about Ohio State. Look at the struggles of Ohio State's offensive line. Do you have better talent? Do you have more rotational players? I would guess not. Ohio State's getting beat on the offensive line right now. You have to be able to coach, develop, and use your depth properly. And if LJ Martin gets hurt, you have next man up mentality. I am not worried about guys getting hurt in October. That's just to me, it's part and parcel of football.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. You know, like I said, I mean, I guess I watched a different game, like you said, so that's cool.
Yeah, my biggest concern for BYU is the way they close games. Is it taking your foot off the gas or?
Yeah, I think it was because you were up, whatever you said, 37-10 or whatever, and then they had, or it would have been 34-10 going to the fourth, you know? So I think, yeah, they took their foot off the gas. That's correct.
You can't do it. You can't do it because, again, when I look at look at some of the stats in this game, you gave up 379 yards of total offense. Now, granted, you put up 483. But if you look at the fact that they ran for 181 yards, you ran for 255, and they still scored 24 points. That's, for my money, that's it. There's some things that are a little concerning here. There are some things that are a little concerning. The defense, again, I am wildly impressed with this defense. I am. It was a little scary watching Mangelson get hurt for BYU because I think he's a really important part of that defensive front. But I think the way that these guys performed in Glasgow, Kelly, you look at some of the defensive numbers, Crew Wakely had one little snafu, but Crew Wakely being in the right place consistently, and the fact your leading tackler had 5 tackles tells me like this entire defense is involved. It tells me that they're paying attention to details. And you look at that, you did all of this with only 1 sack. Man, 1 sack, 2 interceptions, 3 passes defended. I think that I don't know how else to talk about Isaiah Glasgow. The guy just is. There are no more adjectives or accolades I can pile on top of him. He's fast. He's brutal. The guy is inflicting damage on the best players on the other team. It's
great to see.
I think it's remarkable. I think it is remarkable.
I think it's a trademark of the BYU defense, and I think it's a trademark of any great defense, whether it's at the college level or the NFL level. You have to be willing to hurt people. You have to be willing to punish people, and you have to be willing to to hit the quarterback hard when you get your chances, and they don't miss. And, all last week, everyone said we wanted Patrick Mahomes to get hurt when we said that dude should be, taking him to the woodshed on the sideline when he wants to not step out of bounds. And I think you see that with BYU. Ja'Cory Brown wants to stand back there and wants to hold on to the football. You're going to pay a price for it. So, yeah, I think the BYU defense absolutely took their foot off the gas at the end of the game because it was 34-10 and the game was clearly over. And I agree with you. They need to learn that perception is reality and that the coaches poll matters and that the AP matters. However, obviously you got into the top 10, which is nice to see, nice progress. But it does beg the question, what this team will do against better competition, because again, and I know I clearly saw this game differently, but I felt like the balance that you brought to the offense, I felt like was intentional. I felt like
But what balance are you talking about?
I'm talking about the fact that two backs have basically the same amount of carries, and your clear goal was to keep them fresh the whole game, so you could pound the rock the entire game. So you didn't have to.
I mean, that's great. That's great that they LJ Martin had 15 carries, and Hinckley Rapati had 13 carries. Jake Retzloff ran the ball 14 times.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see it as great balance. And a lot of those runs were off script. And I'm not complaining about the offense. Don't mistake this. But if we're going to sit here and we're going to, critically break this game down, BYU has to run the football more effectively. And in my opinion, with more intentionality. You run the football with the intention of burning the clock to a certain extent. You run the football and you do it to control the pace of the game. And I think part of this is, I don't think that BYU, who averaged 5.3 yards a carry against UCF, I don't know that they fully embrace clock control on this football team.
Well, that's fair. Yeah. And that's both sides of the football.
I think that, well, on defense, it's far less impactful. You on defense, you've got to make plays. BYU is making plays all over their defense. On offense, you have to be able to sustain when you are in the lead in the second half and you know that you're having trouble with RJ Harvey running the football. You've got to be able to sustain 10, 12, 14 play drives by running the football, by consistently being in 3rd and short, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 3rd and less than 5. And I don't think we've seen that out of this offense. I don't think we've seen that out of this running game, frankly. So I guess everybody, if you're getting excited about balance, I want to see 30 passes from Jake Retzloff. I want to see 30 runs from LJ Martin. And whatever happens after that, great. That's balance. Run it as much as you pass it. In fact, run it a little more than you pass it, and everything's great. If you're going to pass it 30 times, give me 45, 50 runs. And you want to talk about injuries. If you're worried about LJ Martin, are you not worried about Jake Retzloff running the ball 14 times?
Well, I mean, yeah, you're concerned about it, but like you said, I think a lot of those were, off script, of course. A lot of those were, hey, didn't have something open, had to scramble, tried to create, so yeah, obviously your quarterback, you're always trying to make sure you're mitigating risk with him. And I do think that we've talked about, what was it? The Oklahoma State game, I think it was, where he throws that interception and then has to make that tackle at the end of the first half. Those are the things that I think you're trying to remove from, exposing Jake Retzloff. You don't want him to have to be out tackling people.
Don't try too hard to be sophisticated.
Yeah.
Right? You've got two physically punishing defenses coming at you in Utah and Arizona State in what is that? Arizona State's the 23rd. Those are two physically punishing defenses. I think, obviously, it's nice you have a bye week going into the Utah game. And I think it's really imperative you come out of that Utah game, you look at what we saw out of Kansas this week. That Kansas team's not laying down for anybody. That Kansas team, and again, this is maybe this is the one of the main talking points today. K-State's living dangerously. Having watched every snap of that Kansas game, if you are not concerned about Avery Johnson having to throw the ball to win you games, I am not sure what you're looking at. He had 2 balls, one on that last drive where the defensive lineman had it in his hands. He had the football right here and dropped it. And you look at that other interception Kansas dropped, both of those end the game. And they're terrible. The last throw that Avery Johnson made there was inexplicable. And if you're a K-State fan this morning, please stand up, because I would love to understand. If you're K-State, there's got to be a higher level of insecurity at this point, because his numbers, and this is what fans will do. They'll go look at a box score and say, well, Marty, look at his numbers. Bro, if Kansas can catch a football on defense, you lost that game. You lost that game. Like you look at the numbers out of that game, and I think the only thing you can come up with is, can Avery Johnson throw us to a win in a big critical situation? And I'm telling you, the answer is he has not shown that yet.
Well, and I think it's a tale of two halves, right? I mean, obviously, K-State, struggles in the first quarter, comes out in the second quarter, throws up, 16 points, dominant second quarter. But then in the second half, you come out and Kansas is all over you. And we've talked about it so much, where if K-State's behind, that's bad news for you. That's bad news for you as a K-State fan, because I think Avery is not a polished enough passer, and the decision making in the heat of the moment tends to be suspect. He tends to make throws that are putting it nicely, risky, and he tends to ask his receivers to go out and make a play, when really what it should be is, hey, we're behind, we have an offensive scheme that allows us to go down the field.
Maybe today's just the day that we're going to disagree. Maybe that's what today's show is. That last throw by Avery Johnson was an abomination. You've got to take the sack there. I understand you're trying to keep your team in field goal range. Do you rather take the sack, or do you rather have a defensive lineman drop an interception? Now, at the end of the day, sitting here Monday morning, well, thankfully you dropped the interception, right? Because and this is the unspoken truth, if that cat makes that interception, the Big-12 is worse off for it. Let's just be real honest about it. If K-State loses that game and they're 6-2, their season's over. They're going to a bowl game, and I'm telling you, because think back to that last play, and I don't know how many people saw it. It's Avery Johnson trying to move this team down the field to get a field goal.
Mm-hmm.
He is under immense pressure, and he goes full Will Levis, and he's getting hit and just flicks the ball.
Right. So that's what I'm talking about.
Like, where are you? What are you thinking?
So I'm talking about under the heat of the moment, when you're under pressure, you're like, again, most times plays like this are going to happen when you're behind in a game. Obviously, you're having to throw your team to victory. You're in that 2-minute situation. Like, generally speaking, that's when bad decisions for young quarterbacks happen. And that's exactly what we saw out of Avery Johnson. And I agree. If dude catches the football, we're having a different conversation. I don't think we're disagreeing on this. I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Avery Johnson's not a polished passer. He's not a polished decision maker. You got lucky, in my opinion, against Colorado going after a freshman DB, and you got lucky in this game. So,
K-State is living dangerously. They have had, in multiple weeks, against their best opponents. You didn't get the luck of the draw against BYU, because BYU has shown you they have the explosiveness to put you away, and they did. Colorado, if they don't lose Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn, you lose that game. If Kansas can catch a football on defense, you lose that game. And I think when you look at the help that Kansas State has gotten from their opponent, you look at this schedule for Kansas State. I understand if you're going to throw the ball down the field and it gets intercepted, I'm good with that. That throw to the defensive lineman by Avery Johnson is inexcusable. That's not can't throw the football. That's panic mode guy.
Mm-hmm.
You're essentially in the arms of the defender. And I cannot believe that he didn't catch that football.
It's not being like as a quarterback, you have to be committed to one or two outcomes in that situation. Hey, if I've got nothing down the field, got to protect the football. And you can't have a turnover in that situation. You can't have that doesn't add up. That doesn't work. So that's what I'm saying. Avery Johnson is immensely talented. He needs someone to develop him mentally, and he needs someone to develop him in the passing game. Because if he was more developed in the passing game, they wouldn't be as run heavy as they are. You look at the running back room, they just rip off 100-yard rushing performances like it's nobody's business because they have to, because they don't have a choice. That's the only way that they offensively can go out and win a ball game, unless you give them opportunities on defense. If you're again, the Colorado thing is a perfect example of what we're talking about here. Right? If you had Travis Hunter at the end of the game there on that wide receiver, he's not throwing the ball there. You're not throwing it to that guy. Just the same way in this game, he wasn't prepared to say, okay, if I'm under pressure and it's hey, throw it or get sacked, I probably should protect the football and take the sack instead of just flicking it randomly.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how the quarterbacks finish this season. I mean, this league, I think we've seen certainly with Utah, Oklahoma State. I think certainly those are the best examples. When you don't have a quarterback that's capable of executing at a high level, you're going to lose games. And I think that it'll be interesting. Iowa State coming out of a bye, it'll be really interesting to see how Iowa State handles. I look at this Texas Tech situation. You want to talk about quarterbacks, bros. Baron Morton goes out of the game. And it is remarkable to me just how well Texas Tech handled that situation. Should have won the game. Texas Tech should have beat TCU. It is crazy to me that Will Hammond came into that game and absolutely executed. It was a joy to watch that go down. And yet you just couldn't defend. You could not defend. It is inexplicable to me that Texas Tech lost this game. And it's just another week where I'm asking, when is it time to start talking about Joey McGuire? Because you again, look at the bottom teams in this league. I mean, I think all of us agree that Texas Tech should be far better than they are, but they're not. And I think you start looking at all of this topsy-turviness that has found Oak State and Utah at the bottom of this league. And I look at Texas Tech, all the talent's in place. We were talking about depth here a few minutes ago. How much more offensive depth do you need to see from Texas Tech? Because they've got, there is no quarterback that I was more impressed with this week than Will Hammond. Coming in, doing the job. Now, somebody needs to tell him that when you're running for your life, you probably don't want to cut back to the middle of the defensive line because they're gonna rip your heart out of your chest, which they did. That hit that Will Hammond took, for anybody that saw it, the hit that Will Hammond took in the middle of the defensive line, that's how you shorten your career.
Yeah.
So somebody needs to teach him. But turn around and hand the ball off to Taj Brooks. How tough is it? How difficult is it, Joey, to turn around and hand the ball off to Taj Brooks? And he didn't do it, and they lost the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for all of the happenings in that game, the clear, and consistent narrative with Texas Tech, and this is not just this year, this is last year. This is, really in Joey's tenure with the team. You have offensive talent, but you can't stop anybody. And 9 days out of 10 with this team, it's not that you don't have the talent defensively to stop people. It's that your play calling's brutal. It's that the schemes and the situations you put your defense in with the talent that is on the field, the personnel, it's just not the correct play call. And you see that bleed through the entire program, like what you were just saying. Why wouldn't you, your backups in, run the ball more? right? Like that's an easy football concept to sit here and say, okay, cool. Will's playing well, but let's make sure that we give him as much support as possible. Let's make sure that we open as much windows in the defense as
Yeah.
possible by running the football more. And I just, I hate to, and I know you're famous for saying you're not fire the coach guy, but at some point you got to talk about Joey. At some point, this team has to get better.
If they go winless down the stretch, and there's a chance if Barron's hurt, and the sad thing is, when it comes to it, for those who again didn't see it, he injured his left shoulder. He had x-rays and they came back unclear. There's an injury in there. That's what that means. And unfortunately, as impressive as Hammond was, he's not Baron Morton.
Mm-hmm.
He's not experienced. He's not a guy that throws the ball all over the field. And they've got Iowa State in Ames on Saturday. Good luck. Colorado in Lubbock, at Oak State. And again, I'll just say Oak State can beat anybody at home. Have they? Not really, but they can. And then West Virginia and Lubbock. And I think there's a real chance they go 1-3. And if Oak State shows up at home, there's a chance they go 0-4. I think the likely outcome is they go 1-3 because I think West Virginia is better than people give them credit for.
Right.
I saw all of the chatter this weekend about firing Neil Brown. I think they're better than people give them credit for, and I think that Texas Tech is in real trouble here. There's a chance they go 1-3 down the stretch, and it is shocking to me how bad. And I know, again, we have a lot of Texas Tech folks on this show that say that Joey McGuire has the support of the boosters and the administration. If you go 0-4 down the stretch here, if you go 2-4 down the stretch here, because you look at what's left for them, they have got, if you go back to North Texas, and I guess you can, but I would go back to conference play. Arizona State, Cincinnati, and Arizona. You start conference play 3-0. And now you've lost back-to-back games against in-state rivals in Baylor and TCU. And now you got to go to Ames. That's not good. And if you're a Texas Tech fan, how on earth do I have a booster at USC this weekend telling me that they have $100 million war chest to fire Lincoln Riley with? Because you understand that Lincoln Riley has $90 million left on his contract. Then SC boosters have raised $100 million to fire Lincoln Riley. And we're trying to somehow tell a story to keep Joey McGuire in Lubbock. That's crazy to me.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I think that SC has national championship expectations, and they haven't been that team in quite some time, and they're definitely not that team right now, in my opinion. I think, you
certainly not.
The LSU win was awesome, and I was really excited about SC, and they just simply have come back to earth. They, and now I think if you're looking at an SC game, like, you can count on missed tackles, you can count on bad mistakes defensively, and you can count on them, trying to throw their way to a victory with a quarterback, in my opinion, who just isn't that guy. That's not who he is.
I thought he was that guy this weekend. I watched a lot of SC, the Rutgers SC game. Rutgers is no easy opponent, and I'm telling you, Miller Moss looked great. I actually thought they ran the ball well, and here nor there, it doesn't matter. You can't be a 500 football team at SC and keep your job. And Joey McGuire, I don't know how you're looking any other where. And then before we get to your comments here on the Monty Show, Coach Prime, he's bowl eligible, and it's not like he's accidentally bowl eligible. I don't know what they are feeding the folks in Boulder. But you look at how Deion Sanders has turned this team around, and you beat a really solid Cincinnati team comfortably. That game was never in doubt. Now, they're another team just like BYU that's got to learn to close games. But that game was never in doubt, and it was another Is virtuoso performance strong? It probably is. Shedeur Sanders is absolutely dominating. And you look at Travis Hunter. Do you guys understand he had 9 catches for 153 yards and 2 scores? And then you start looking at the fact that they're throwing at him. He had 4 pass defenses in that game. Travis Hunter did. And then you start understanding that he is the best player in college football in Travis Hunter. Dominating. Absolutely dominating. Did I mention? And Colorado fans in the comments section lost their minds over this. Florida State over the weekend lost a guy that is a 4-star commit. This is their 5th recruit in the last 6 weeks to pull their commitment to Florida State. And Florida State doesn't look willing. They don't look like they really want to play football. They were never in danger of winning the game. Tell me again that I'm the nut job who thinks that Deion Sanders is going to get a call from Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, that game went pretty much exactly how we thought it would go. You weren't in that game, and Miami's just simply better than you, more talented than you. And yeah, I mean, if I'm Florida State, I don't think, why would you not call Prime? How do you not call Deion Sanders? How do you choose not to do that?
You threw for 115 yards.
Yeah, it's just not competitive. Like, it's not.
Are you out of your mind? You threw for 115 yards. Real quick on Cam Ward while we're talking about Miami. Did you guys see the post-game interview he gave? Where they asked him about the Heisman Trophy, and he said, I don't want to talk about it. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me. I'm worried about winning games for this team. Like all of the haters on the Palouse and anybody that has questioned Cam Ward, this cat's doing the job. Like the way that he and Damian Martinez have made over that offense, and they're wildly impressive to me at Miami. And this was the game, I think we even talked about this last week. This was a game that Mario Cristobal was supposed to lose, as he does every single year. Mario Cristobal finds a way at Oregon or finds a way at Miami the last couple of years to just throw a game away that they should have won. That's not what happened here. They dominated. They physically intimidated Florida State.
And again, look no further than how you went about offensively winning this game. What did you need to do to win the game? Well, you didn't need to throw for 400 yards. You didn't need to have some iconic Cam Ward performance, even though he was good in this game. What did you do? You just turned around and handed off, and you ran for 10 yards carry. It's just not that difficult. And I think that, again, the ACC is a very straightforward proposition, which is another reason I think Florida State should be calling Deion Sanders. The ACC is not a deep conference. The ACC is not difficult to win. Like, you need to recruit and just execute your game plan, and you're going to dominate that conference, which is why I say, like, if I'm Cam Ward, it's great to hear him say that, but I'd probably be saying the same thing. Are you not focused on going out and dominating this conference the rest of the way and getting into the college football playoff with the highest seed possible with where you're at in your season here? I mean, you're sitting nice right now, man. You're on a really good trajectory as far as the playoff is concerned.
And another school that's got nice deep booster pockets, Florida State. Because Norvell, I was reading yesterday, Norvell's got a pretty ironclad contract. And if you want to buy him out, and I want to make sure I get this right, you would owe him $63.7 million. So that's a lot of money. And it is the 3rd largest buyout in the country behind Lincoln Riley, which would be the largest buyout in the history of college football. Not even Jimbo Fisher's getting $90 million. But it would be the 2nd largest buyout, only to Kirby Smart. So Lincoln's got number 1, Kirby's number 2, and Mike Norvell's number 3. And the folks at Florida State are like, yeah, we got this. We've got that. Like, you're so willing not to put that money into the lawsuit against the ACC to get rid of Mike Norvell, which is, there's some ultimate irony there. Let's be honest. The karma gods coming back around at Florida State, which,
Yeah.
we'll see. I think I have real doubts as to whether or not Deion Sanders would pull up and leave Boulder, but it does kind of line up.
Well, this is the offseason. He would do it if he was going to do it. I mean, you're not like, so obviously Shador, Travis are both leaving for the NFL draft. That's pretty much a given. It would be shocking if they did not. And, so this would be the year, because if he stays another year, you got to be all in. If you're going to stay a year after Shador leaves and Travis leaves, now you're going to rebuild that recruiting pool, and you're going to keep advancing that program forward. So if you're FSU, I'm telling you have to make the call this season, or don't worry about it, next year. Like, that doesn't make sense.
I'll just say, if Florida State calls Deion Sanders and says, do you want to be the next football coach at Florida State? I'll cut off his other toes if he says no. That was probably too much. My point is, you went to Florida State. You are a Florida State dude. How do you say no to Florida State if you're Deion Sanders? Can you blame him? If he says I'm leaving, can you blame him?
Well, no. I mean, you can't blame him. And I think whether it's his connection to Florida State, whether it's the fact that, again, I know that Colorado has access to the college football playoff, but with all due respect, at Florida State, it's a much, straighter path to getting in. And, I also think that football in the state of Florida is way bigger than football in the state of Colorado. And I think that, again, you thought there was a lot of hype at Colorado with Prime.
Whew.
A reunion at Florida State would be a whole nother level of insanity, if you will.
Because if you look at, and I think this is where all my Texans and all my Floridians, you guys need to come to the front here. Look at the trajectory of football in Texas and the trajectory of football in Florida. Traditionally, two of the biggest powerhouses for skill position talent in this country. Is Texas football in a better place than Florida football? Not really. Not really. Because you've got the Texas Longhorns, phenomenal football team, who I think is being disrespected, but that's just me. And you've got the Miami Hurricanes, who are going to have to every week prove that they're who we think they are. But how bad is Florida State? And how bad is the University of Florida? And how bad has UCF been this year? And how bad is TCU? And how bad is Baylor? And how bad is Texas Tech? Like, there's going to be change. You can't tell me that Florida's not making a change. You can't tell me that Gus Malzahn's not looking over his shoulder. And you can't tell me that Mike Norvell's not on the hot seat. And Joey and Spike Dykes' kid and 8-Ball and Waco, there's going to be big time change. I think there's going to be.
Should be.
Yes, I think there's going to be 10 big time jobs open this offseason. And I think Deion Sanders is going to get a call from at least half of those schools. At least half. I don't think he's leaving. I don't think he'd leave Colorado to go anywhere else in the Big 12. I think he would leave to go to Florida State.
And I would agree. I think that he's built something solid, I would say. At Colorado, we need to see just how far they take it this year. I mean, if they can get to, 8 wins, 9 wins, okay, that's a different conversation than 6, 7 wins. I mean, that I know that's only 1 or 2 more wins, but in the grand scheme of things, on how the perception of a program is very different at 8 or 9 wins than it is at 6 or 7 wins. And so obviously, I respect what Deion's built. I know that he does it differently. I know that it's way more in your face than a lot of other head coaches, and his style. And
a lot of people don't like it.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't like it, and it's different. And I totally understand why that may rub some people the wrong way. But the reality is, you can't any longer say that he's a terrible head coach, or he sucks, or he's just
a fraud. He's a fraud, Marty.
You can't.
Come on now.
You can't say that.
No, not at all. And real quick, I'm just going to put this up here because there's some ridiculousness in this. This is the AP poll, obviously. Oregon, Georgia, Penn State, who we're going to talk about in a second. Okay, totally get it. I have a lot of concerns about that offensive line at Ohio State.
Agreed.
Miami, you're putting Texas behind Miami? You're putting Notre Dame in front of a BYU? And you're putting Iowa State. Iowa State's not one of the 10 best teams in the country. Get it? They didn't play this week. They're not one of the 10 best teams in the country. You're putting Indiana ahead of Alabama. Did you guys see Alabama this week? Are you out of your mind? You're putting Boise State at 15th in what was one of the best wins of the football season. I don't know how many people like me stayed up and did not sleep watching UNLV and Boise State in front of, what was that, 45,000 people at Allegiant on Friday night.
Yeah.
And UNLV doing stellar work against Ashton Ginty, and it didn't matter because Boise State's a better team than you are. This is kind of ridiculous to me that LSU is still in the top 20. Hey, I've warned you about Brian Kelly, my friends. I've warned you that it's crazy to me.
I just don't think
that Colorado is behind Washington State and Army.
Yeah.
And the reason I point to some of these teams, the disrespect of the Big 12 in the top AP top 25 is remarkable. That I feel like BYU is undervalued here. I'd have BYU ahead of Notre Dame. And my question is, where's the logic in Notre Dame being 8th? They beat Texas A&M, who you say is 10 now. And so they're only 8th because they lost to NIU? Is that what we're saying? Well, they lost to NIU. BYU's resume is far better than Notre Dame's resume. Far better. And yet BYU is behind. And for all the jackwagons, and I'm talking to you, Brett McMurphy, that have yet BYU, like AP voters, I don't get it. Do you watch football? Do you watch football?
I mean, I don't think it's any secret that they don't, they're not watching football. They're not watching enough like BYU football. They're not watching enough, of the teams lower in their rankings. I think I would agree that it is kind of funny that BYU's undefeated, man. Like, and again, we talked so much about it last week. Like, that's your hammer if you're BYU. You're undefeated. You haven't lost a football game this year. And you're seeing the bias against BYU as far as people just simply not watching them. Because if you watch them, then you're going to see, okay, hey, this is a pretty good football team. But the problem is that A&M's playing LSU on national television. A&M's playing, Notre Dame's playing national television every single week that everyone tunes into. And so what happens is these writers come out here and they watch Notre Dame and they're like, oh, well, Notre Dame dominated this week. They look really good. They're playing good football. But BYU's undefeated. So let's just make sure Notre Dame's right ahead of them.
But look at Brett McMurphy's. This is his top 15. Anybody want to explain to me how you have Notre Dame at 12? And who's ahead of Notre Dame? Texas A&M at 11. Do you watch football? And I like Brett a lot. How do you have Texas A&M, who Notre Dame beat? How do you have Texas A&M ahead of Notre Dame in your poll? How? I'm here for the conversation. How do you justify this? How do you have BYU behind Iowa State? Who's got a better resume? BYU by far, in my opinion, has a better resume. This is what's wrong with college football.
Mm-hmm.
It drives me crazy that soccer writer guy still doesn't respect BYU, who went to UCF and dominated. Oh, you didn't watch the game.
Yeah,
that's what that tells me.
I think the hard part with Notre Dame and A&M is that, number one, obviously people just, I legitimately think people have just forgotten about A&M's loss to Notre Dame to start the year. Obviously, because if you didn't forget about it, you wouldn't have
lose
A&M.
early.
Right. And that's what
Lose
we talk
early.
about that all the time, right? If you lose early, it's not as big a deal. So I think that people have just simply said, hey, A&M is not the same team they were or something. They're telling themselves a story about A&M.
But wasn't everybody's All-American Navy and Army?
Yeah.
BYU absolutely, I mean, no reach arounds, dude. 51-14, they dominated Navy.
Yeah, Notre Dame crushed them.
Dominated. Just dominated Navy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they're behind Texas A&M. They're 12th in the country. Yeah, that Notre Dame team's 12th in the country. What are you, man? That'd be like playing anything more than 3 on a flex play in PrizePicks. Now, listen, you guys, I love that you're sending me your PrizePicks. I was talking to Jimmy on Instagram. Jimbo, I can't remember it's like Jimbo wins 69 or some stupid name like that. He sends me like a 7-pick thing on PrizePicks. Did he flex play it? No. Straight up. Did he win? No. He won 5 of the 7. Had you flex played it, would you have won?
Oh, I win. Google me.
You would have won. If you trust me on PrizePicks. Domination in NBA PrizePicks over the weekend. Domination. And again, you can all hate me because I get it. I get it. Anybody see the Lakers? That'd be the Los Angeles Lakers of Los Angeles, Southern California and stuff. I don't know who's paying attention to Los Lakers. They're 3-0. Has Bronny played a single minute since opening night? Nope. You know why? Because they're looking for bodies. And I will say right now, after 3 games on October 28th, and I'll probably wind up looking like a dickhead, Anthony Davis is an MVP candidate. Because that dude
looks healthy.
Is winning me bread on PrizePicks.
Yeah.
You want a points, rebounds, assists machine? Anthony Davis, Los Angeles Lakers. Points, rebounds, and assists. And I would also like to... No, I'm not ready to talk about the Bears yet. I'm not ready. Download the PrizePicks app. Use the promo code Monty. When you open a new PrizePicks account, you deposit $5. They'll give you 50 more instantly. You open a new PrizePicks account, deposit $5, they'll give you 50 more. It's that simple. It's the best daily fantasy promotion I think I have ever seen. Now, I was sitting here this morning, had nice hot shower, sitting at the desk at 4:45 this morning, and there is some really delectable PrizePicks to get into.